So 2340. The concrete never stops humming. That's the first thing you learn working night shift at Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The turbine hall breathes with a constant mechanical rhythm. Pistons firing, coolant flowing, electricity being born from invisible atomic fire somewhere deep in the reactor core. After 6 months as a junior turbine technician, I've learned to sleep through anything. The hammering of steam against metal, the whine of generators spinning at impossible speeds, even the sharp smell of oil and ozone that clings to everything, seeping into your clothes, your hair, your skin, until you can't remember what clean air smells like. Tonight feels like every other night. April 25th, 1986. Late evening. The spring air carries the scent of pine from the forest surrounding the plant. Reactor number 4 towers above the Ukrainian landscape, like a concrete monument to Soviet engineering pride, its cooling systems exhaling white steam that drifts across the darkening sky. Pripyat sits 2 kilometers away, 49,000 people settling into their evening routines in apartment blocks that exist solely to serve this machine. Streetlights glow orange across the distance. I can see them from the turbine hall windows when I take my breaks, a constellation of human life orbiting the reactor's power. My wife is in one of those apartments, 8th floor, building 12. She'll be putting our daughter to bed right now, reading her a story about cosmonauts or heroes of labour. I should call. I always mean to call during my breaks, but the payphone is 3 floors down, and the line is always busy with other workers checking in on families they see too little of. Tomorrow, I tell myself. I'll call tomorrow. Night shifts are supposed to be easier. Fewer supervisors prowling the corridors with clipboards and suspicious eyes. Quieter operations. Time moves differently after midnight. Slower, heavier, like the whole plant is holding its breath until sunrise. Most of the senior staff go home. The real engineers, the ones who understand the reactor's moods and temperaments, who can read the neutron flux charts like poets reading verse. They leave us with checklists and radio protocols and the absolute certainty that nothing can go wrong. The RBMK reactor is safe, too safe. That's what they tell us during training. Soviet technology at its finest. Multiple redundancies, fail-safes upon fail-safes, the kind of machine that makes nuclear disasters the concern of careless Americans, not disciplined Soviet workers who follow procedures and trust the system. I believe them. Everyone believes them. Pyotr Vasiliev works the turbine station beside mine. He's been here 8 years, long enough to treat the reactor like a familiar animal. Dangerous if mishandled, but predictable when you know its habits. We share a thermos of tea around 9 o'clock. Bitter black stuff that tastes like it was brewed in a boot. Heard they're finally running the test tonight, Pyotr says, not looking up from his pressure readings. About time. How many delays now? 3, maybe 4, he shrugs. Dyatlov is pushing for it. We exchange a look. Everyone knows Anatoly Dyatlov. You don't work at Chernobyl for more than a week without learning about the deputy chief engineer. A man built from sharp angles and sharper words, whose career ambitions leave no room for caution or delay. His footsteps echo differently than everyone else's. Harder, more certain. He carries a clipboard and a permanent expression of barely contained frustration, like the entire world is moving too slowly for his brilliant mind. Safety test during a shift change, Pyotr mutters. Genius planning. Not our concern, I reply, which is what we always say when decisions come from above. The hierarchy is absolute. The chain of command is sacred. Junior technicians monitor gauges and replace gaskets, and don't question why tests are scheduled at the worst possible time with insufficient preparation. Anatoly Dyatlov arrives at 8 in the evening, and the atmosphere changes immediately. I'm checking coolant flow when I feel it, that subtle shift in the air that happens when someone important enters a space. Conversations quiet, postures straighten, the casual efficiency of experienced workers hardens into something more rigid, more careful. His voice cuts through the mechanical hum. The safety test proceeds tonight. No more delays. I'm in the turbine hall when I hear this, separated by thick concrete walls, but word spreads fast through the plant's nervous system. Operators talking on open channels, technicians passing information, along like a game of telephone. The test has been postponed 3 times already. Equipment issues, scheduling conflicts, some vague concern about preparation time that no one wanted to articulate too loudly. The logic of the test makes sense. If external power fails during a shutdown, we need those crucial seconds of electrical generation from the spinning turbines while backup diesel generators come online. The gap between power loss and diesel startup could leave vital cooling systems offline long enough to cause problems. The test is meant to prove the turbines can bridge that gap, but the operators have been complaining for weeks. The test protocol is incomplete. The timing is wrong. Too many variables remain uncontrolled. Too many safety systems will need to be disabled to create the test conditions. Dyatlov doesn't want to hear it. The test is approved, he says, his voice carrying the weight of unquestionable authority. We proceed as scheduled. No one argues with Dyatlov, not directly. Arguments mean reassignment, bad evaluations, career death in a system where your employment file follows you forever. So the operators exchange glances that communicate volumes without words and return to their consoles. I return to monitoring Turbine 8, checking pressure readings that never change, making notes in a logbook that no one will ever read. The reactor power begins lowering around 11:30. This is normal procedure. You can't run a safety test at full power. Too many variables, too much energy to control. The plan is to stabilise at 700 megawatts thermal, about 25% of maximum output. Low enough to be safe, high enough to be meaningful. But something goes wrong. I hear about it through the radio chatter, voices tense with confusion, cutting through the usual calm professionalism. The power has dropped too far, too fast, down to 30 megawatts thermal when it should be holding it at 700. An automatic safety system kicked in unexpectedly. Xenon poisoning, a buildup of xenon-135, a neutron absorbing byproduct of fission that's killing the chain reaction faster than operators can compensate. The reactor is dying when it should be idling. Power's crashed, someone says over the radio. We're poisoned out. Withdraw the control rods, Dyatlov orders. His voice is sharp, impatient. Compensate. That's against... The operator's objection dies mid-sentence. No one finishes arguments with Dyatlov. Compensate now. The control rods are made of boron carbide, designed to absorb neutrons and regulate the nuclear reaction. They slide into the reactor core from above, hundreds of them, precisely positioned to maintain the delicate balance between criticality and shutdown. Withdrawing them removes that control, removes the brakes, allows the reaction to accelerate unchecked. But Dyatlov wants the power back up. He wants the test to proceed. He wants to file his report and go home and never think about this night again. The political pressure from Moscow is immense. Another delay would be embarrassing, career limiting, the kind of failure that follows you. They withdraw the rods, almost all of them, far more than regulations allow. So many that the remaining rods barely have purchase in the core, leaving the reactor balanced on a knife's edge between stability and catastrophe. Power begins climbing, slowly at first, then faster. The reactor is responding. coming back to life, reaching toward the parameters needed for the test. I feel a small vibration through the floor. Nothing alarming at first, just the familiar tremor of massive turbines adjusting to new conditions, generators compensating for changed electrical loads. Everything is fine. Everything is routine. I've seen this dance 100 times. Power up, power down. The reactor breathes, and we breathe with it. Pyotr walks past carrying a wrench, whistling tunelessly. Going home in 4 hours, he says. Wife's making pelmeni. Lucky man. You could come over tomorrow, bring your family. Maybe, I say, though I probably won't. Socialising outside work feels like an intrusion on the few hours I have with my daughter. She's 4 years old, at that perfect age where everything is magical and her father can still fix anything with a hug and a story. Pyotr disappears around the corner, his whistling fading into the mechanical symphony. I never see him again. Around midnight, the vibrations change. It's subtle at first, so subtle I almost convince myself I'm imagining it. Not stronger exactly, but different, less regular. Like the building's heartbeat has developed an arrhythmia, skipping beats in a rhythm that feels wrong in ways I can't articulate. I press my hand against the turbine casing. The metal thrums under my palm, normal operational frequency. Nothing obviously dangerous. But underneath that familiar vibration, there's something else. A deeper tremor. A resonance that shouldn't be there. Alarms trigger briefly in the distance. Warning lights flicker in the control room. I can see the reflection through the observation window. Amber and red painting the operators' faces in hellish colours. Then someone silences them. The lights stop flashing. Readings are within acceptable range, a voice says over the radio, forcefully calm. Continue the test. I trust them. I'm a junior technician with 6 months of experience. What do I know about reactor physics beyond the basics they taught us in training? My job is to watch pressure gauges and replace worn gaskets, and not ask questions that make supervisors uncomfortable. The engineers understand the science. They've studied for years. They know what they're doing. The floor trembles again. Harder this time. Definitely harder. I check my instruments, running through the mental checklist we all carry. Turbine pressure holding steady. Temperature within parameters. Steam flow normal. Everything in my little corner of the plant looks exactly the way it should look. The vibration must be coming from somewhere else. Maybe construction work on reactor 3, maybe heavy equipment being moved, maybe a truck on the access road hitting a pothole. Nothing to do with me. Nothing to worry about. The reactor is stable. The reactor is safe. The reactor cannot fail. These truths have been repeated so many times, they've become liturgy, sacred text. To doubt them is to doubt the system itself. And doubting the system is the first step toward becoming unreliable, politically questionable, the kind of person who gets reassigned to positions far from home. At 01:15, I see one of the control room operators stumble out into the hallway. His face is pale, slick with sweat that has nothing to do with the ambient temperature. He leans against the wall like it's the only thing keeping him upright. "You okay?" I ask. He looks at me without seeing me. "Power curve is wrong. The coefficient..." He stops, shakes his head. "Dyatlov says it's fine. It must be fine." "What coefficient?" "Doesn't matter. I'm just tired. Too many double shifts." He pushes off the wall and walks away, moving like a man in a dream, or a nightmare he can't wake from. At 01:23, I hear shouting from the control room. Not the controlled urgency of normal operations, but real shouting. Panic breaking through professional training like water through a cracking dam. Something about power rising uncontrollably. Something about positive void coefficient. A technical term that means nothing to me, but everything to the men watching the reactor's vital signs spike across their monitoring screens. I move toward the control room, drawn by the commotion. Through the window, I can see chaos. Operators running between consoles, numbers climbing on displays, someone pointing at a graph that's spiking off its scale. Dyatlov's voice cuts through it all, sharp and certain. Emergency shutdown. Press AZ5. The AZ5 button, red, mushroom-shaped, protected under a clear plastic cover that has to be lifted before you can access it. The ultimate fail-safe. The thing that inserts all 211 control rods simultaneously and kills the reaction within seconds. The panic switch that ends every nightmare scenario. Someone lifts the cover. Someone presses the button. For 2 heartbeats, nothing happens. The control rods begin descending into the core, sliding down their channels towards salvation. Emergency power kicks in to drive them faster. The reactor should be shutting down. Power should be dropping. The crisis should be ending. But the RBMK design has a flaw. A flaw no one bothered to mention during training because acknowledging it would mean acknowledging that Soviet engineering isn't perfect. The control rods have graphite tips. Graphite moderates neutrons, speeds up the reaction. For the first few seconds of insertion before the boron carbide can reach the core, those graphite tips actually increase reactivity. The fail-safe makes everything worse. Power doesn't drop, it explodes. The first sensation is pressure, a massive unseen fist punching upward through the floor. Not an explosion, exactly, but a tremendous blow that makes the entire building lurch sideways. I stumble, catch myself against a door frame, feel the metal shuddering under my palms, like a living thing trying to tear itself apart. Then the explosion, a sound beyond sound, not heard so much as felt in the bones, the teeth, the soft organs. The air itself seems to tear apart. My ears pop violently, glass shatters somewhere, windows, gauges, light fixtures exploding into crystalline rain. Concrete dust erupts from the walls in grey clouds that fill the corridor and burn my throat. The lights die. Emergency lighting kicks in, dim red bulbs that turn everything into a scene from hell. I can't see 10 metres ahead. The dust is too thick, hanging in the air like fog, turning every breath into sandpaper scraping my lungs. I realise I'm on my knees. I don't remember falling. Something warm runs down my face. I touch it, expecting blood, but it's just sweat, or maybe coolant, or maybe something worse that I don't want to think about because thinking about it means accepting that the impossible has happened. What happened? Someone shouts nearby, voice high with shock. What was that? No one answers. The building is still shaking. Smaller tremors now, aftershocks rippling through the concrete foundation. I push myself upright, legs uncertain, and stagger toward the corridor, following the emergency lights through clouds of dust that make breathing feel like inhaling powdered glass. The air tastes wrong. Metallic, sharp, like licking a battery or biting tinfoil. I spit trying to clear it, but the taste only gets stronger. Heat radiates from somewhere ahead. Not the normal warmth of operating machinery, but intense, focused, like standing near an open furnace or a blacksmith's forge. I turn the corner and stop. The far wall is gone, just gone, blown outward into the night. Rebar juts from shattered concrete like broken bones. Through the gap, I can see sky, stars, smoke rising in black columns that blot out the darkness, and light, a blue-white glow so intense it hurts to look at, pulsing upward from somewhere below, like an unholy beacon calling to heaven. The reactor core, exposed, burning. Impossible. A man stands beside me, his face grey with dust, blood running from a cut above his eye. I recognise him. Mikhail something, a shift supervisor with 15 years of experience. He's staring at the same thing I'm staring at, and his face holds an expression I've never seen before. Not fear, something deeper than fear, a kind of spiritual horror that comes from witnessing something that shouldn't exist in this reality. Hydrogen explosion, he says, voice flat, certain, desperate. Just hydrogen, the reactor is intact. I want to believe him. I want to believe that what I'm seeing is anything other than what it actually is. Steam. Hydrogen. Some chemical reaction that's dramatic but manageable. But the light is wrong. The heat is wrong. The air tastes like death, and my skin is already tingling with something that has no name, but will kill me anyway. The reactor is intact, Mikhail repeats, louder this time, like saying it forcefully enough will make it true. The core cannot be exposed, it's impossible. I don't argue. We stand there watching the blue glow pulse like a dying star, and I understand with absolute certainty that nothing will ever be normal again. This moment is a dividing line. There is before and after, and we're standing in the razor-thin present, where both still exist, but won't for much longer. People are running toward the reactor, not away, toward. They're shouting about damage assessment, about containing the fire, about protecting the other 3 reactors that share this building. No one is wearing protective gear, because no one believes the core is exposed. Hydrogen explosion, structural failure, problems with solutions, nothing that requires lead suits and respirators, and the kind of protection that acknowledges you're walking into the mouth of death itself. I see Vasily Ignatenko among the responders, a young firefighter from Pripyat, maybe 25, with the kind of face that belongs in propaganda posters. Strong jaw, clear eyes, the look of a man who believes he can fix anything if he just works hard enough and follows the rules. He's running toward Reactor 4 with his crew, carrying hoses and axes, ready to fight a fire that cannot be fought with water or foam or courage. His skin is already reddening, not from heat, not from exertion, from something invisible that's pouring out of the ruined reactor in waves that no one can see or measure or escape. Gamma rays, neutrons, beta particles, an alphabet soup of radiation that's tearing through cells, and DNA with the casual efficiency of bullets through paper. The dosimeters are screaming. The few that still work, high-pitched electronic shrieks that should be impossible to ignore. Most have already maxed out their scales and gone silent, unable to register readings this extreme. 3.6 Roentgen per hour is the maximum they can measure. The actual number is thousands of times higher. Graphite blocks litter the ground, outside, big chunks of it scattered like dark confetti across the concrete apron surrounding the reactor building. The reactor core is made of graphite, huge blocks arranged in precise geometry to moderate neutrons and keep the nuclear fire controlled. These blocks should be inside, buried deep in the core structure, protected by meters of concrete and steel. Instead, they're out here, glowing faintly in the darkness, each one containing enough radioactive contamination to kill anyone who handles them. Someone picks one up. "What is this?" he asks, turning the block over in his hands like he's examining a strange piece of debris. "Just rubble," another voice answers. "Put it down and help with the hoses." The man drops it and runs toward the fire. His hands are already doomed. The skin will blister, peel, slough off in sheets over the coming days. He'll lose his fingers first, then his hands, then his life as his body systematically shuts down from the inside out. I want to warn them. I want to scream that they're being poisoned, that every breath is pulling radioactive particles into their lungs, that the glow they're running toward is death made visible. But I don't know enough. I'm not a physicist. Maybe it really is just hydrogen. Maybe the dosimeters are faulty. Maybe the experts are right, and my instincts are wrong. and I'm just a coward looking for reasons to run. I walk back inside. The corridors are chaos. People shouting contradictory orders. Equipment being dragged toward the reactor. Tools and hoses and generators, none of which will make any difference. Someone is crying in a dark corner, curled into themselves, hands over their ears. The emergency lights paint everything red, and through it all the building keeps trembling like it's trying to shake itself apart from foundation. To roof, nausea hits me suddenly. Not gradual, not the slow build-up of motion sickness or bad food. One moment I'm fine, the next my stomach is trying to expel itself through my throat. I barely make it to a stairwell before I'm vomiting, my body rejecting something it can't identify or fight. Everything comes up, the tea, the sandwich I ate at dinner, bile, then just dry heaves that leave me gasping. My head pounds, pressure behind my eyes like something's trying to escape through my skull. My eyes sting badly, tears streaming down my face. When I wipe sweat from my forehead, the back of my hand comes away hot, like I've been sunburned. How long was I outside? 5 minutes? 10? Long enough. The radiation has already done its work at the cellular level, breaking chemical bonds, shredding DNA, triggering the cascade of damage that will kill me. Not immediately, that would be merciful. But slowly, over days or weeks, as my body systematically fails, system by system. I lean against the wall, trying to breathe, trying to think through the fog that's starting to fill my head. Something is deeply wrong. Not just the explosion, not just the exposed core, something happening inside my body at a molecular level, damage being written into my chromosomes faster than my immune system can respond. I don't know the word for it yet. Acute radiation syndrome. I will learn it soon. A supervisor finds me in the stairwell, his face flushed with anger or exertion or the first stages of radiation sickness. It's impossible to tell. Get up, he orders. We need everyone helping. The reactor, I start. The reactor is intact. Faulty readings. We've confirmed it. But you saw a hydrogen explosion? Some structural damage? Nothing that can't be contained. His voice carries the weight of official truth, the kind that gets announced in Pravda and repeated until reality bends to match it. Now get up, we have work to do. I want to argue. I want to tell him about the blue glow, the metallic taste, the graphite blocks scattered across the ground, like radioactive confetti. But he's already walking away, shouting at someone else, and I'm just a junior technician who doesn't understand the science and can't possibly know better than the men with degrees and decades of experience. I get up, I go back to work, because what else is there to do? Where else is there to go? The chain of command is absolute. The hierarchy is sacred. To refuse would be to admit cowardice, to break the social contract that holds Soviet society together. So we work. The test continues in some perverse way. Not the safety test. That's obviously abandoned, forgotten in the chaos. But the test of whether we can maintain the illusion of control. Whether we can pretend this is manageable. Whether we can keep working while invisible death seeps into our bones and writes our epitaphs in damaged cells. The control room staff insists the reactor cannot have exploded. It's physically impossible. The RBMK design doesn't allow it. The safety systems, the multiple redundancies, the careful Soviet engineering, all of it makes a core explosion impossible by definition. Therefore, it didn't happen. The dosimeters showing extreme radiation must be malfunctioning. All of them, simultaneously, for the first time in history. A cosmic coincidence of equipment failure that just happens to occur during a hydrogen explosion. Workers are ordered back inside the reactor building. Some refuse, not many, but some. They stand at the threshold, staring into the damaged structure, and something in their survival instincts overrides the conditioning. They back away, shake their heads, disappear into the night. Most don't refuse. Most of us go back inside, carrying equipment, taking readings, breathing air that glows faintly in the darkness. We've been trained our whole lives to obey, to trust the hierarchy, to believe that Soviet engineering cannot fail. So we go back inside, and the radiation tears through us like we're made of smoke. I last maybe 20 minutes before I have to stop. My vision is blurring. Everything has halos, the emergency lights, the reflective strips on safety equipment. Even the darkness seems to glow at the edges. The headache has spread down my neck, into my spine, a deep ache that feels like my skeleton is trying to tear itself apart from the inside. I sit down hard on a concrete step, head between my knees, trying not to vomit again. There's nothing left to vomit, but my body doesn't care, keeps trying, keeps heaving. Someone walks past carrying a fire hose. His face is bright red, like severe sunburn after a day at the beach. Sweat pours down his face, but he's not wiping it away. He's humming to himself, off-key, like this is just another shift and he'll go home in a few hours and sleep through the day. Maybe he doesn't feel it yet. Maybe the radiation has already scrambled his nervous system enough that the pain signals aren't getting through. Maybe he's already too damaged to recognise what's happening. I close my eyes and see the blue glow even through my eyelids. Phosphorescent after images burned into my retinas, the colour of Chernobyl radiation, particles moving faster than light through water and air, the visible signature of atoms tearing themselves apart. The sky begins to lighten around 4 a.m. I make my way outside, needing air that doesn't taste like metal and death, needing to see something other than concrete and chaos. Dawn spreads across the Ukrainian landscape in shades of grey and gold, beautiful and terrible. Smoke continues pouring from Reactor 4, a dark column rising kilometres into the atmosphere, spreading in a radioactive plume that will drift across Europe like an invisible plague. And underneath it, still visible even in the growing light, that blue glow, steady, pulsing, hypnotic, the Chernobyl radiation of exposed nuclear fuel burning in the open air. Pripyat is waking up. I can see the apartment blocks in the distance, lights coming on in windows as alarm clocks ring and families begin their Saturday routines. People getting ready for work, children preparing for school, mothers making breakfast in kitchens that face the reactor, their windows open to catch the spring breeze that carries invisible death. They have no idea. No one has told them to stay inside, to close their windows, to wet towels and stuff them in the cracks around doors. No one has told them to run as far and fast as possible, to abandon everything and flee. A woman stands on her balcony on the 8th floor, watching the smoke. She's holding a coffee cup, wearing a bathrobe. Her hair is pulled back in a loose bun. Just another morning in the worker's paradise, except the air she's breathing is poison, and the smoke she's watching contains particles that will settle into the soil and water and food chain for the next 30,000 years. I try to wave at her, to signal danger somehow, but I'm too far away, and she wouldn't understand anyway. And what could she do? Where could she go? The evacuation hasn't been ordered. The truth hasn't been told. Everyone is still pretending this is manageable, containable, just a small industrial accident that will be cleaned up and forgotten. Building 12, 8th floor. That's where my wife is, where my daughter is sleeping in her small bed, stuffed animals arranged around her like guardians. The window in her room faces the reactor. I always meant to ask for an apartment on the other side of the building, facing away from the plant, but the waiting list was long and our current place was adequate, and I kept putting it off. Tomorrow, I always told myself. I'll handle it tomorrow. I collapse near the main gate. One moment I'm standing, watching Pripyat wake to its last normal. Saturday, the next I'm on the ground, my legs simply refusing to hold me anymore. The concrete is cool against my cheek. Someone is shouting my name, but it sounds distant, underwater, like I'm already drowning in something invisible. Strong hands lift me. The world tilts and blurs. I see the blue glow one more time, pulsing against the dawn sky like a second sun made of death. And then everything goes dark. The infirmary is full. I wake up there. Or maybe I was awake the whole time and just don't remember. Memory is already becoming unreliable. Holes appearing in the timeline like rats have been chewing through it. Rows of beds filled with men in various stages of deterioration, some vomiting into metal basins, some trembling with fever that no blanket can warm, some lying very still, staring at the ceiling with eyes that see something beyond this room, beyond this world. We all look sunburned, we all smell like metal. A nurse moves between beds, checking pulses, taking temperatures, avoiding eye contact. Her hands shake when she handles the thermometers. She knows. Whatever's happening to us, she knows it's beyond her training, beyond the medical supplies available, beyond help. She's young, maybe 22, probably assigned here straight out of nursing school, thinking she'd spend her career treating minor injuries and writing sick notes. Not this, never this. Hospital, someone says from a nearby bed. They're taking us to Moscow. Moscow. Hospital number 6. The place that specialises in radiation exposure. The place that exists specifically for accidents that aren't supposed to happen. That officially don't happen. That definitely didn't happen here. Because the reactor is intact and everything is under control. They load us into buses around noon. The movement makes me vomit again. Dry heaves that produce nothing but bile and blood. Through the window, I watch Pripyat slide past, parks and playgrounds, and people going about their Saturday routines. Children riding bicycles through invisible clouds of radioactive dust. Old women feeding pigeons with breadcrumbs that will poison the birds. Everyone contaminated and no one told. The May Day parade is still being planned. I can see banners being hung, red fabric bright against grey concrete. In 2 weeks they'll march children through these streets, waving flags, celebrating the glory of Soviet achievement, while the invisible poison accumulates in their bones. The bus picks up speed, leaving the contamination zone, except we're taking the contamination with us. Our bodies are radioactive now, walking sources of gamma radiation. The bus driver wears a respirator. The medics at the back wear protective suits. They've cordoned us off from the world we used to belong to. Someone near the back is crying. Someone else is arguing with the medics, insisting he feels fine, that he just needs rest, that this is all overreaction to a minor accident. His skin is already blistering, red patches spreading across his face and hands, like someone's painting him with an invisible brush. Piotr is on the bus. I see him 3 rows ahead, slumped against the window. His face is the colour of old paper. He's not whistling anymore. Won't ever whistle again. Won't go home to his wife's pelmeni. Won't grow old or retire or hold grandchildren. None of us will. Hospital number 6 appears through the haze of my deteriorating vision. Grey buildings surrounded by high fences. Armed guards at the gate. Doctors in protective suits that tell us everything about how contagious we've become. Not with disease, with death itself. They strip our clothes and burn them immediately. Everything. Uniforms, underwear, boots, watches. All of it radioactive beyond salvage. We stand naked under decontamination showers while workers scrub our skin with brushes that leave us raw and bleeding. The water runs off our bodies in grey streams, carrying particles, but not enough of them. The contamination is inside now, woven into our cells. They take samples, blood, tissue, bone marrow, documenting the progression of something that has no cure. Acute radiation syndrome, the medical term for cellular suicide, the scientific name for what happens when atoms fall apart inside living flesh. The symptoms worsen over days that blur together. Hair comes out in clumps when I run my hand across my head. Skin peels away in sheets, leaving raw patches that weep clear fluid. Internal bleeding starts, nose first, then gums, then digestive tract. I taste copper constantly. My immune system crashes, white blood cell count dropping towards zero, leaving me vulnerable to infections that wouldn't normally be dangerous but are now lethal. The doctors speak quietly outside my room. They think I can't hear them. Or maybe they know I can and don't care anymore. Maybe they need to talk about it, need to process what they're witnessing. The textbook cases becoming reality. The projections from Hiroshima and Nagasaki finally getting Soviet data points. Exposure estimated at 6 grays minimum, one says. Probably higher. The ones who went inside multiple times, 8, maybe 10 grays. Prognosis? Silence. Long enough that I understand the answer without needing words. I won't leave this hospital. None of us will. We're already dead, our cells just haven't finished dying yet. We're ghosts haunting our own bodies, waiting for biology to catch up with physics. Other victims arrive over the following days. Firefighters who fought the blaze. Helicopter pilots who flew over the reactor, dropping sand and boron. Plant workers who stayed behind to prevent the other reactors from melting down. All of them glowing faintly in the dark. Their bodies breaking down in the same horrible progression. Vasily Ignatenko is in the room across from mine. I hear his screams at night, when the pain gets too bad for morphine to touch. He's dying faster than most of us. He was on the roof, directly above the exposed core, breathing in particles that settled into his lungs like radioactive dust. His wife visits every day. She's pregnant. Visibly pregnant. The guards try to keep her out, but she fights past them, demands to see her husband. She holds his hand even though the doctors warn her about the radiation. Kisses his forehead even though his skin is sloughing off. Love in the face of physics. Devotion that radiation cannot touch. She'll lose the baby. The radiation dose from just being near him will be enough. But she doesn't care. Or she doesn't believe it, or she believes that some things matter more than survival. I think about that night, 01:23 in the morning, April 26th, 1986. The moment someone pressed AZ5 and the control rods descended into the reactor core, their graphite tips actually increasing reactivity for the first few seconds before the boron could take effect. A design flaw no one had bothered to mention. A fatal hesitation built into the failsafe itself. How many people knew? How many engineers and physicists and bureaucrats understood that the emergency shutdown could make things worse under certain conditions? How many reports were filed and ignored? How many warnings were buried under pressure to meet quotas and maintain the illusion of Soviet superiority? The reactor didn't scream when it died. There was no dramatic alarm. No countdown timer, no warning that would make good cinema. Just a button press, a power surge, 2 explosions, and then a blue glow rising into the night, while people below insisted everything was fine. That's what I remember most clearly, as my vision fades and my organs shut down one by one. Not the explosion, not the panic, but the certainty, the absolute conviction that this couldn't be happening because Soviet reactors don't fail. Because we had been told they were safe. Because admitting the truth would mean admitting that everything we believed was a lie. I close my eyes. The blue glow is still there, burned into my retinas, or my memory, or the space between. Beautiful and terrible. the colour of atoms coming apart, the light of the end of the world. They're evacuating Pripyat now. 36 hours after the explosion, they finally tell people to leave. Buses rolling through streets, collecting 50,000 people who have already absorbed more radiation than they can safely handle. They're being told it's temporary, a precaution. Pack light, bring your documents. You'll be back in a few days. They will never be back. The city will stand empty for decades, a monument to the lie that killed it. Apartment blocks full of abandoned possessions. Schools with textbooks still on desks. An amusement park that never opened, its Ferris wheel rusting silent against the sky. Building 12, 8th floor. My wife gathering our daughter's favourite toys. Thinking they're going on a short trip. Not understanding they're fleeing forever. And underneath it all, in the ruins of Reactor 4, the nuclear fire will burn. Not flames, just heat, slow decay of uranium and plutonium, fission products releasing energy that will persist for centuries, while the world builds a sarcophagus to contain it. Then a larger structure over that, layer upon layer of concrete and steel, trying to bury the mistake. My last coherent thought is about routine, how the disaster didn't announce itself, how it felt like every other shift until suddenly it didn't, how we walked into catastrophe believing we were maintaining safety, and by the time we understood the truth, the damage was already written into our cells. We had coffee breaks and complained about scheduling and planned dinners we'd never eat. The reactor hummed and we hummed with it, comfortable in the rhythm, trusting the machine. The reactor did not scream when it died. It simply stopped being controllable and became something else. Something ancient and terrible. Fission unleashed, the power of stars burning in open air. And we, standing in its light, breathing its poison, became something else too. Ghosts of a moment that would define the next 100 years. Proof that some mistakes are too large to survive. Evidence that certainty, in the face of overwhelming reality, can kill as surely as any invisible fire. The blue glow fades, or maybe my eyes just stop working. It doesn't matter. It was already too late. The concrete had stopped humming hours ago, but I didn't notice when. Somewhere between the explosion and the hospital, between exposure and acceptance, the rhythm that had defined my working life went silent. And in that silence, finally, I understand. The reactor was never safe. We were never in control. And the night of April 26th, 1986, when routine became catastrophe and one button press changed the world, that night was always coming. We just didn't know it until 01:23:40, when it was already too late. The ocean doesn't warn you when it's about to take everything. It sits there, black and patient, waiting for steel to fail and hubris to crack. On the night of April 14th, 1912, the North Atlantic showed 1,500 souls, exactly how indifferent the universe can be. But before that night, before the water and the screaming and the silence, there were 4 days when everyone aboard believed they were invincible. This is the story of what it felt like to be there, not as a name in a manifest or a statistic in a tragedy, but as a person who walked those decks, ate those meals, and watched the ocean scroll past, never imagining it would become a tomb. The promise of the voyage. Southampton Harbour, April 10th, 1912. The Titanic doesn't look like a ship. It looks like a city that decided to float. I stand on the dock with my single leather case, staring up at the black hull rising above me like a canyon wall. 4 massive funnels stretch into the grey English sky, painted in the White Star Line signature, black and buff yellow. Smoke drifts lazily from 3 of them. The 4th, I'll learn later, is just for show. Aesthetic balance. Even the ventilation is designed to project confidence. My name is Thomas Whitmore, and I'm 31 years old. I'm travelling to New York to take a position with an accounting firm in Manhattan. Second class passage, ticket number 243709, purchased through the White Star Line's London office for £12 sterling. Respectable but not extravagant. My cabin is E47, located on E deck, which the brochure assures me is well above the waterline and features all modern conveniences, including electric heating and running water. The gangway is crowded with families, businessmen, immigrants clutching documents, and children. I recognise the organised chaos of bureaucracy in motion. White Star Line officials check tickets against manifest lists, marking off names with careful precision. A photographer from the Southampton paper is capturing images of the departure for tomorrow's edition. Someone is interviewing passengers about their reasons for travelling, taking notes in shorthand. Everyone is looking up, craning their necks to take in the full scope of what we're about to board. The ship is 882 feet long, 92 feet wide at her broadest point. 46,000 tons of displacement. The largest moving object ever created by human hands. A little girl near me asks her mother if the ship touches the clouds. The mother laughs but doesn't immediately say no. Unsinkable, a man next to me says, reading from a newspaper. That's what they're calling her. Double hull, watertight compartments. They say even if you flooded 4 compartments, she'd stay afloat. 16 compartments total, divided by 15 transverse bulkheads, extending up to E-deck. Progress, another passenger adds, folding his own newspaper to reveal a technical diagram of the ship's interior. Look at this. Electric elevators, heated swimming pool, squash court, a gymnasium with mechanical horses and bicycles. And that's just in first class. What do we get in second? Someone asks. Library, smoking room, promenade deck. Better than first class on most other ships, they say. I believe them. Why wouldn't I? The boarding process is orderly, efficient. White Star Line stewards in crisp uniforms guide us through wide corridors, panelled in oak and pine. The second-class entrance is less grand than the first-class gangway visible forward, but still impressive. Everything smells new. Fresh paint, varnish, the faint chemical scent of fire retardant applied to fabrics. Electric lights cast a warm glow that feels nothing like being aboard a ship. It feels like checking into a respectable hotel that happens to be tilted very slightly toward the bow. My cabin is small but comfortable. A bunk, a washstand, a mirror. A porthole looks out onto the dock, and I watch late arrivals hurrying up the gangways as departure time approaches. There's a festive atmosphere. People waving, vendors selling last-minute souvenirs. Someone is playing an accordion somewhere above deck. At noon exactly, the whistles blow. 3 deep blasts that you feel in your chest more than here. The Titanic is leaving Southampton. We glide away from the dock so smoothly I barely notice we're moving. It's only when I look out the porthole and see the buildings sliding past that I realise we've departed. No lurching, no grinding of machinery. Just smooth, inevitable forward motion. The English Channel is calm, almost glassy. We make a brief stop in Cherbourg, France, where more passengers board via tender. Then Queenstown, Ireland, for the final embarkation. I stand on deck and watch the Irish coast recede into mist, the last land we'll see for days. Then we turn west, toward open ocean, toward America, toward a future that feels as solid and certain as the deck beneath my feet. Life aboard the unsinkable ship routine establishes itself with surprising speed. Breakfast is served at 8 in the second-class dining saloon, a beautiful room with mahogany panels and long tables covered in white linen. The food is excellent, better than most restaurants I have eaten at in London. Porridge with cream, eggs, bacon, fresh bread with butter and marmalade. Coffee that's actually hot, served in proper china cups, with saucers. I sit with a school teacher named Margaret Holt, travelling to Boston to visit her sister. She's probably 40, with greying hair pulled back in a practical bun, and an easy smile that speaks of years spent managing a classroom full of children. Next to her is Benjamin Cross, a mining engineer heading to Colorado, his hands permanently stained with mineral dust. He can never quite scrub away. Across the table, the Fletcher family, Father James, Mother Elizabeth, and 3 children ranging from maybe 6 to 14. The father works in textiles and has secured a contract with a mill in Philadelphia that promises to triple his current salary. We make small talk, weather observations, comments about the food, which everyone agrees exceeds expectations, speculation about arrival times and what New York will be like. The children ask questions about America, about whether the buildings really do touch the sky, about cowboys and Indians. Their mother answers patiently, though she's never been either. It's a fresh start, James Fletcher says at one point, looking at his family with obvious pride. Everything we've worked for. His wife reaches across the table and squeezes his hand. Their oldest daughter rolls her eyes the way teenagers do when parents display affection, but she's smiling. These are normal things, ordinary moments, the kind of quiet contentment that makes up most of a life. Later, I'll remember this breakfast in painful detail. The way the morning light came through the portholes, the sound of children's laughter mixing with adult conversation, the feeling that everything was exactly as it should be. I don't know yet that within a week, 3 of the 5 Fletchers will be dead. After breakfast, I walk the promenade deck. The second-class outdoor space is at the stern, and while it's not as grand as the first-class areas forward, it's still impressive. Wooden deck chairs are lined up in neat rows, each with a small card indicating whether it's been claimed for the voyage. Passengers bundle in coats against the April chill and watch the wake spread behind us. White foam against blue-black water that seems to stretch forever in every direction. The engines are always there. A low vibration you feel more than hear. A constant reminder that enormous machines are churning away below us, driving this massive vessel through the ocean at over 20 knots. The rhythm is steady, reassuring, the heartbeat of industrial achievement. You could set your watch by it, and many passengers do. There's a particular quality to life aboard a ship that's hard to describe to someone who hasn't experienced it. The world shrinks to the size of the deck beneath your feet. The ordinary concerns of land-based life, bills, work obligations, social pressures, all seem distant, postponed. You exist in a bubble, suspended between departure and arrival, between who you were and who you'll become. I find myself falling into conversation with strangers easily, something I'd never do in London. There's an intimacy to shared spaces and shared routines. By the second day, I know names and stories. The young couple on their honeymoon, married just 3 days before departure, still blushing when anyone mentions it. The elderly man travelling alone to join his daughter in Chicago, showing everyone who'll listen a photograph of his grandchildren. The group of young men heading to factory work in Detroit, loud and boisterous at dinner, playing cards until late in the evening. Lunch at 1. The menu changes daily. Soups, roasted meats, vegetables, puddings. Always more food than seems reasonable, as if the ship's owners are determined to prove the superiority of their service through sheer abundance. The dining saloon fills with the warm smell of cooking and the cheerful noise of several hundred people eating together. Then more walking or reading in the library, a compact but well-appointed room with mahogany shelves stocked with popular novels and current newspapers from before we left England, or watching other passengers, which becomes its own form of entertainment. There's a middle-aged couple who circle the deck exactly 7 times each afternoon, counting aloud in unison, convinced that precise exercise will prevent seasickness. A young woman who sketches in a leather journal, capturing faces and moments with quick, sure strokes. She offered to draw me once, but I declined, suddenly shy, a boy of maybe 10 who runs everywhere, despite his mother's continuous scolding, treating the ship as his personal playground. He's particularly fascinated by the engines, pestering every crew member he meets with technical questions they patiently answer. The ship's officers are visible, but not intrusive. They move through the crowds with calm authority, answering questions, giving directions, occasionally stopping to chat with passengers about the crossing, the weather, the ship's capabilities. Everything about their demeanour communicates that this voyage is utterly routine, a crossing like any other. They've done this dozens of times. There's no reason to think this trip will be any different. Dinner at 6 is the main event of each day. Multiple courses arrive in sequence: soup, fish, roasted meat with potatoes and vegetables, salad, dessert, cheese and crackers if you want them. Proper silverware, multiple forks and spoons arranged according to etiquette that second-class passengers are expected to understand. Wine for those who want it, though it costs extra. The dining saloon fills with conversation and laughter, the sound building throughout the meal until it's almost deafening. Children who are running wild on deck all afternoon sit quietly, or mostly quietly, practicing the manners their parents have been drilling into them. The electric lights overhead cast no shadows, creating a warm, even illumination that makes everything feel safe and modern. This is the 20th century, the lights seem to say. We have conquered darkness. We have conquered the ocean. We are protected by science and engineering and human ingenuity. Outside the portholes, as dinner progresses, the ocean grows dark. The transition from day to night happens gradually, the blue water deepening through grey to black. By the time dessert is served, there's nothing visible outside except the occasional reflection of the ship's lights on the surface. After dinner, passengers scatter to their various evening activities. Some gather in the smoking room, though that's primarily a male domain. Others head to the lounge where someone always seems to be playing piano, popular songs and hymns mixed together. The music drifts through the corridors, giving the ship a soundtrack. I hear it sometimes lying in my bunk, notes filtering through the walls, accompanied by the constant rhythm of the engines. Others return to their cabins to read or write letters they'll post when we reach New York. I see people labouring over paper at small desks, trying to capture their experiences, describing the ship and the ocean and their fellow passengers to loved ones waiting on shore. You wouldn't believe how large she is, one woman writes at a table near mine. Like a floating palace. I feel so lucky to be aboard. I usually walk the deck one more time before bed, breathing cold air that grows colder each night, watching stars emerge in impossible numbers, standing at the railing, looking out at darkness that extends to the curve of the earth. You feel simultaneously insignificant and protected. The Titanic is a bubble of light and warmth moving through infinite cold and infinite emptiness. But the bubble feels impenetrable, permanent, as if the ship could sail forever, never reaching shore, just carrying its cargo of souls through eternal night. Other passengers seem to feel the same way. We gather at the railings without speaking much, content to simply stand and watch and breathe. There's something meditative about it. The vastness of the ocean, the tiny bubble of humanity crossing it, the sense that you're part of something larger than yourself. Beautiful, isn't it? Margaret Holt says one evening, materialising beside me at the railing. Terrifying, I reply. If you think about it too much, she smiles. Then perhaps we shouldn't think about it. Perhaps we should just enjoy the crossing. On the third day, Friday the 12th, the temperature drops noticeably. The change is dramatic enough that everyone comments on it. Passengers who are comfortable in light coats now bundle in heavier layers, scarves wrapped around their necks, gloves on their hands. Breath becomes visible even in the middle of the day, small clouds of vapour dissipating in the wind. The stewards mention ice warnings casually, the way you might mention clouds forming on the horizon. Ships ahead of us have reported ice fields, bergs floating south from Greenland on the Labrador Current. It happens every spring, apparently. Nothing unusual. Will we change course? Someone asks at lunch. If needed, Cross says, though he has no particular authority to make that claim. But the officers know what they're doing. They've been crossing the Atlantic for years. Nothing unusual for this time of year, the steward confirms when I ask later. We'll adjust course if needed. Standard procedure. The Titanic has watertight compartments. Even if we did hit something, which we won't, the ship is designed to stay afloat. The ocean remains. Calm, unnaturally calm, someone remarks at dinner. Like glass, like oil, like a mirror reflecting the sky. The Titanic cuts through it without resistance, leaving a wake that heals instantly behind us, erasing all evidence of our passage. Saturday, April 13th. The cold intensifies. Several passengers claim to see ice in the distance, white shapes against the horizon that might be icebergs or might be tricks of light on water. No one seems concerned. We're on the fastest, most modern ship in the world, staffed by experienced crew who've made this crossing dozens of times. Sunday the 14th dawns clear and bitterly cold. Church services are held in the dining saloon, hymns rising toward the coffered ceiling. The service is led by Captain Edward Smith himself, a tradition on White Star Line vessels. He's an experienced officer, near retirement, with a distinguished career spanning decades. This is meant to be his final voyage before stepping down. A fitting capstone, I overhear someone say. Afterward, more walking, more routine. The Fletcher children play tag on the deck until their mother calls them inside. I pass through one of the passages near the first-class areas and catch a glimpse of that world. A woman in an afternoon dress that probably cost more than my yearly salary. Men discussing business ventures over cigars. The faint sound of a string quartet warming up for afternoon tea service. I have lunch with Benjamin Cross and Margaret Holt. We discuss New York, what we've heard about it, what we hope to find there. Cross orders wine and tells stories about mining camps in Wales, close calls with cave-ins and gas pockets. Holt talks about her students, the bright ones who'll probably leave their small towns, the others who'll stay and raise the next generation. Did you know they're saying this ship cost £1.5 million to build? Cross mentions. And the maiden voyage is fully booked. White Star Line is making their money back already. I heard Mr. Ismay himself is aboard, Holt adds, referring to J. Bruce Ismay, managing director of the White Star Line, in one of the luxury suites, and that American millionaire Mr. Astor with his new young wife. The Astors, the Guggenheims, the Strausses, Cross lists. Half of American high society is in first class. This voyage is as much about prestige as transportation. And yet, here we all are, I say. Same ship, same ocean, same destination. Cross raises his wine glass. To equality, at least in that regard. Do you think it's really unsinkable? The Fletcher boy asks me that afternoon. We're both leaning on the railing, watching the ocean. I think they've thought of everything, I tell him. The engineering is supposed to be remarkable. He nods, satisfied, and runs off to find his siblings. The day passes. The sun sets around 7, painting the western sky orange and purple, before fading to deep blue and finally black. Dinner is lamb, and potatoes, vegetables in butter, pudding for dessert. The dining saloon is warm and bright, and filled with the sound of silverware and conversation. After dinner, I return to my cabin to change into warmer clothes. Through the porthole, I can see stars, more stars than I've ever seen in my life. The ocean reflects them, creating the illusion that we're suspended between two identical skies. I check my pocket watch. 11:15. I should sleep, I think. Tomorrow will be even closer to New York. Another day of routine and safety and progress. I don't know yet that I have less than 30 minutes before everything changes. I don't know that within 2 hours I'll be fighting for air in water cold enough to stop a heart. I don't know that this calm, ordinary evening is the last normal moment I'll ever experience. The impact you almost miss 11:40. I'm at my washstand preparing for bed when the ship shudders. It's not violent, it's not dramatic, it's barely noticeable, like dragging something heavy across a wooden floor one room over. A soft grinding sensation that travels through the hull and up through my feet. A vibration that lasts maybe 3 seconds, then silence. I pause, hands wet from washing, and listen. The engine vibration continues unchanged. Voices in the corridor outside sound normal. After a moment, I dry my hands and finish getting ready for bed. The ship makes sounds all the time, settling, flexing, expanding, and contracting with temperature changes. This was probably nothing, but then the engine's slow. It's subtle at first, a gradual decrease in the constant background hum that's been present since Southampton. Within a minute, it's gone entirely. The Titanic is coasting forward on momentum, silent except for the creak of wood and the murmur of confused passengers in the halls. I pull on my coat and step into the corridor. Several cabin doors are open, heads poking out. Everyone is listening, trying to determine what's wrong. Engine trouble, someone suggests. Maybe we hit something. Impossible. There's nothing to hit out here. A steward appears at the end of the corridor, walking quickly but not running. His expression is neutral, professional. "Nothing to worry about, ladies and gentlemen," he announces. "Minor technical issue. We'll be underway again shortly. Please remain in your cabins." He disappears around a corner before anyone can ask questions. I return to my cabin but don't undress. Something feels wrong in a way I can't articulate. The silence is too complete, the stillness too absolute. After 4 days of constant motion, the stopped engines create a void that my mind keeps trying to fill with disaster. I wait 5 minutes, 10. The ship remains motionless. Finally, I grab my life jacket from where it's stored above my bunk and step back into the corridor. This time, more passengers are emerging, pulling on coats and shoes. The steward's reassurance hasn't worked. "I'm going topside," Benjamin Cross says, materialising next to me. "Want to come?" We climb the stairs together, joining a growing stream of curious passengers. The air gets progressively colder as we ascend. By the time we reach the boat deck, our breath is freezing instantly into clouds of vapour. The night is impossibly clear. Stars fill the sky from horizon to horizon, more brilliant than any city dweller could imagine. The ocean is black glass reflecting starlight. No moon, no waves, just flat, infinite darkness and cold. Bitter, bone-deep cold that finds every gap in your clothing and settles there. Several lifeboats have been uncovered, their canvas covers removed and stowed. Crew members are working at the davits, but slowly, without urgency. Other passengers cluster in small groups, speaking in low voices. "See," Cross says. "Precautionary? They're probably just checking the boats." At midnight, he doesn't have an answer for that. I walk to the starboard railing and look out at the ocean. That's when I see it. Ice. Not an iceberg, but thousands of chunks of ice floating past. Some as small as baskets, others as large as wagons. They catch the starlight and glow faintly, creating a field of scattered white against black water. The Titanic sits among them, motionless, surrounded. We hit one, I realise. That's what the shudder was. We struck an iceberg. But if that's true, why is everyone so calm? Confusion in the corridors. 12:15. I've been on deck for maybe 20 minutes when a steward begins moving through the crowd. Life jackets on, please. All passengers, life jackets on. His tone is polite but firm. Not panicked, but not casual either. People look at each other, uncertain. Several laugh nervously. One man says, "This is ridiculous," but puts his life jacket on anyway. The bulky cork and canvas makes everyone look twice as wide, almost comical. "Is there actually a problem?" someone asks the steward. "Just a precaution, sir. Please make sure your jacket is tied securely." Margaret Holt appears at my elbow, her life jacket already on. "Thomas," she says quietly, "something's wrong. I can feel it." Before I can respond, the ship lurches very slightly. Not forward or back, but down. A settling sensation, like stepping into soft ground. It's barely perceptible, but everyone on deck feels it. The conversations stop. Another steward emerges from a doorway. "Women and children to the lifeboats, please. Women and children first." "Surely that's not necessary," a woman protests. "It's so cold out here. Can't we wait inside?" "Please, mum, into the boats." But the lifeboats are tiny compared to the ship. Fragile-looking wooden shells suspended on ropes, swaying slightly in the still air. The ocean is 60 feet below, black and vast. The idea of leaving the solid, well-lit deck for those small boats seems insane. Most people don't move. The crew begins to physically guide women and children toward the boats. "Come along now, just a precaution. You'll be back aboard in an hour or two." "What about the men?" Fletcher's wife asks, gripping her children. "Men will board once all women and children are safe." But there's something in the way he says it that doesn't sound like standard procedure. It sounds like goodbye. The first lifeboat begins to load. Women step into it reluctantly, looking back at husbands and fathers. The Fletcher children are crying now, not understanding why their family is being separated. Fletcher himself stands back, hands in pockets, trying to smile reassuringly. "It's all right," he tells his wife. "I'll see you soon." She looks at him for a long moment, and something passes between them that makes my chest tighten. Then she turns and climbs into the lifeboat with their children. The boat holds 65 people according to its specifications. Board of Trade regulations require it to be tested to capacity, but in practice it's being lowered with maybe 30 aboard. The officer in charge, Second Officer Lightoller, I hear someone say, calls out repeatedly for more women and children, but many refuse to board. Half the seats are empty. Some women refuse to board, convinced the ship is safer than a small boat on the open ocean. Others don't believe the danger is real. The Titanic is unsinkable. Everyone knows this. This must be a drill, an overreaction, a precaution that will make for a good story later. "Please, ladies," the officer in charge pleads. "We need to fill the boats. Regulations state we can take 65 per boat." But panic is contagious, and so is calm. If the crew isn't panicking, many passengers reason, then things can't be that bad. Better to wait in the warm saloons than freeze in a lifeboat. Better to stay with family than separate over what's probably nothing. I watch lifeboat after lifeboat descend toward the water, none of them full. Lifeboat number 7, first to launch, carries only 28 people. Lifeboat number 5, maybe 40. The mathematics of it is staggering. Each half-empty boat represents a dozen people who won't have a seat later. It feels like terrible waste, though I can't yet articulate why. Benjamin Cross stands next to me, hands on the railing. "This doesn't make sense," he mutters. "We hit ice, but the ship seems fine. We're not listing. There's no visible damage. Why are they loading boats?" A junior officer overhears him. For just a moment, his professional mask slips, and I see something in his eyes that makes my stomach drop. The ship is taking on water, he says quietly. Below the waterline, multiple compartments are flooding. The mail room is already submerged. Boiler room 6 is flooding. Boiler room 5 is compromised. But the watertight compartments can hold 4 flooded compartments. We have 6 compromised, maybe more. The iceberg created a series of breaches along the starboard side. Not one large gash, but multiple. Small openings across several compartments. The pumps can't keep up. He pauses, and when he speaks again, his voice is barely audible over the crowd. The ship is going to sink. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. He walks away quickly, leaving us standing there, as the full implications settle over us, like the cold. The Titanic is sinking. The realization. 12:45. The deck has developed a noticeable slope. It's subtle enough that you could convince yourself you're imagining it. But when you look at the horizon, the angle is undeniable. The bow is lower than it should be. Water has appeared on E-deck where my cabin is. I know this because a steward comes topside soaking wet from the knees down, reporting that the forward second-class cabins are flooding. My leather case with all my documents is down there, but the thought of retrieving it seems absurd now. The air smells different, colder, wetter, like standing near a waterfall. More lifeboats are being loaded, but the process is agonizingly slow. Each boat must be lowered by hand, ropes feeding through pulleys, while officers count passengers and check for safety. The falls sometimes jam. One boat nearly tips during descent, causing screams from the passengers inside. The band is playing. This detail seems surreal until you realise that it's strategic, keeping passengers calm, providing normalcy in a situation that's rapidly becoming abnormal. They're playing ragtime, cheerful, upbeat music that drifts across the deck and mixes with the sound of steam, venting from the funnels, the creak of davits, the low murmur of hundreds of voices processing the impossible. I find myself near lifeboat 16 as it's being loaded. The officer in charge is young, maybe 25, and visibly stressed. "Room for more," he shouts. "Any women or children?" Several women are pushed forward, reluctant but obedient. A little girl no more than 5 clings to her father's leg, crying. He gently detaches her and hands her to a woman already in the boat. "Take care of her," he says. His voice breaks on the last word. The woman nods, pulling the child close. The father steps back and the boat begins its descent. He stands at the railing and watches until it touches the water, until the crew inside cut it loose and begin rowing away from the ship. He watches until it's lost in the darkness. Then he turns and walks toward the stern, hands in pockets, shoulders hunched. I understand then, fully and completely, that we're not all getting off this ship. There aren't enough boats. The math is simple and brutal. The Titanic carries over 2,000 people. The lifeboats can hold maybe 1,200. And that's if they're filled to capacity, which they're not. Hundreds of people are going to die tonight. And the only question is who. The temperature continues to drop. The stars continue to shine. The ocean continues to wait. Time slows down, 1:15, the forwardie. Well, deck is underwater now. You can see it from the boat deck, the ocean creeping up over railings and benches, swallowing fixtures and fittings. It's not rushing, it's patient, methodical, rising an inch per minute, maybe less, but it's constant, inevitable. The stern is rising correspondingly, not dramatically yet, but enough that walking aft requires leaning slightly forward. Objects that weren't secured are starting to slide. A deck chair tips over with a bang that makes everyone jump. I've lost track of cross and halt. The deck is too crowded, too chaotic. Passengers from all classes are mixed together now. The social divisions that governed the voyage erased by crisis. First class in evening gowns stand next to third class in work clothes. No one cares. The crew has abandoned any pretense of calm. Officers shout orders. Stewards physically push women toward the remaining boats. Arguments break out when men try to board. Women and children only is no longer a suggestion, but a command backed by force. One man produces a pistol, waves it threateningly at an officer. "I'm getting in that boat." The officer, incredibly, pulls his own pistol. "Step back, sir." They stand there for several seconds, guns pointed at each other, while the ship continues to sink beneath their feet. Finally, the passenger lowers his weapon and disappears into the crowd. Lifeboat 14 drops with an officer and several crew members aboard. "We'll row back for more once we're clear," the officer shouts up, but I suspect he won't. Why would you return to a sinking ship? The band continues playing. They've moved from ragtime to hymns now. "Nearer, my God, to thee." The musicians are led by Wallace Hartley, the bandmaster. They're standing on the sloping deck, still in their uniforms, instruments in hand, playing as if this were any other evening concert, providing normalcy in a situation that's rapidly becoming abnormal. They know they're going to die. The bandsmen are not among those being loaded into boats. They're providing a service, maintaining calm, giving passengers something to focus on besides the rising water and the terrible mathematics of insufficient lifeboats. The music is beautiful and terrible, providing soundtrack to disaster. Violin, cello, piano somehow still working despite the angle. The notes drift across the deck and mix with the sound of steam venting from the funnels, the creak of davits, the low murmur of hundreds of voices processing the impossible. I see one of the musicians, a young violinist, glance toward the lifeboats, then back to his sheet music. His fingers never stop moving. The decision has been made. They will play until they can't. I find myself at the starboard railing again, looking down at the water. It's much closer than it was an hour ago, maybe 40 feet below instead of 60. Small pieces of ice still float past, glowing faintly. A few people have jumped. You can see them in the water, tiny heads bobbing, swimming away from the ship. They won't last long in that cold, minutes maybe, but perhaps they prefer taking action to waiting. I'm not ready to jump, not yet. There are still boats being loaded, still chances. A woman next to me is crying silently, tears freezing on her cheeks. "My husband is in third class," she says to no one in particular. They won't let him up. The gates are locked. He was going to join me after settling our belongings. Now the stewards say the passages are closed. "Crew orders," they told him. "Wait for instructions." I don't know what to say to that. The gates between classes have been locked since we left Southampton. Standard procedure, they said. Keeps the ship organised, prevents crowding in first and second class areas. But now, those locked gates mean hundreds of third class passengers can't reach the boat deck, can't reach safety. Later, I'll learn the truth. That third class passengers were trapped below decks for over an hour after the collision. That some gates remained locked even as the ship sank. That stewards, following regulations to maintain class separation, delayed third-class evacuation until it was too late for many. That the ship's designers never anticipated a scenario where rapid evacuation across all classes would be necessary. The very structure meant to ensure order became an instrument of death. Some will eventually find their way up through crew passages, through service corridors not meant for passenger use. They'll arrive on the boat deck to find the last boats already gone or launching. Most won't make it at all. The class system, maintained so carefully during the voyage, becomes a death sentence. The point of no return. 1:45. The angle is severe now. Standing requires holding on to something. Walking uphill toward the stern means leaning forward at 20 degrees, 30 degrees. The deck is becoming a slope. Furniture that was bolted down is ripping free. Deck chairs slide toward the bow and crash into railings. A ventilator breaks loose and tumbles past, narrowly missing a group of passengers. The water is over the bow completely now. The forward well deck has disappeared. The forecastle is submerged. The ocean is eating the ship, section by section, pulling it down into darkness. The last lifeboats are being loaded, officers throwing all protocol aside and simply stuffing people in as fast as possible. Collapsible boats stored on the roof of the officers' quarters are being wrestled free, but there's no time for proper launching procedures. They're shoved toward the edge of the deck, held in place by desperate crew members. I see Margaret halt one more time. She's near collapsible boat C, being physically lifted into it by a steward. She sees me across the crowd, and our eyes meet. "Thomas," she mouths. I nod. There's nothing to say. She's going to live. I'm probably not. The boat drops away, disappearing into the darkness below. The remaining passengers surge toward the stern as the bow sinks lower. Hundreds of people, maybe more than 1,000, crowding onto the rising aft section. The slope is impossible to stand on now. People cling to railings, to each other, to anything fixed. The lights are still on. All over the ship, electric lights blaze, creating a surreal glow against the black ocean. The engineering crew is still down there, I realise. Still at their posts, keeping the generators running, giving us light for as long as possible. They're led by Chief Engineer Joseph Bell and his staff of engineers and stokers. 35 men working in the bowels of the ship, in spaces that are flooding, in temperatures exceeding 100 degrees from the boilers, maintaining power so the pumps can run, so the lights can stay on, so the wireless can keep sending distress signals. They know they're dead. The boiler rooms and engine spaces are deep in the ship, far below the flooding waterline. The watertight doors closed automatically after the collision, sealing them in their workspace. They could have fled, could have tried to reach the boat deck. Instead, they stayed. Every minute the lights stay on is a minute bought with their lives. Every distress signal sent is powered by their sacrifice. The wireless operator, Jack Phillips, is still at his post sending SOS signals, powered by generators kept running by men who will never leave the engine room. This is what heroism looks like, I think. Not dramatic gestures, but professionals doing their jobs, past the point where duty requires it, past the point where survival is possible. Staying because leaving would mean darkness, would mean the end of hope for everyone else. Someone near me is praying aloud. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Others join in. The prayer rises over the deck, mixing with the band's music. The shouts of the crew, the grinding sound of the ship tearing itself apart. Because that's what's happening now. The Titanic was never designed to sink bow first. The stresses are immense, concentrated at the point where the submerged forward section meets the still buoyant stern. Steel plates groan, rivets pop like gunfire. The angle increases, 35 degrees, 40. I'm clinging to a railing, feet braced against something that might be a ventilator. The ocean is rushing up to meet us, black and hungry. This is real, I think. This is actually happening. I'm going to die. The break. 2:10. The lights flicker. Once, twice. They glow brighter for a moment. A final surge of power from the generators fighting against impossible odds, then go out completely. Darkness drops over everything like a curtain. For several seconds, there's silence. Then the screaming starts. Hundreds of voices in the darkness calling for loved ones, for God, for help that isn't coming. I can't see anything. Just blackness and stars and the vague sense of the deck tilting ever steeper beneath my feet. Then deep. Within the ship something breaks. It's not loud. Not in the way an explosion is loud. but it's immense, a bass note you feel through your entire body, the groan of millions of pounds of steel reaching their breaking point. The Titanic was never designed to sink bow first at a 60-degree angle. The stresses are concentrated at a single point, between the third and fourth funnels, where the submerged forward section's weight pulls against the still buoyant stern. The ship shudders, and for a moment I think she's settling back, levelling out. Hope flares bright and foolish, then she splits. Between the third and fourth funnels, the Titanic breaks in half. The keel separates first, then the decks peel apart level by level. Steel plates designed to withstand the pressure of the ocean pull apart like paper. Rivets the size of a man's fist shear off and spray into the darkness. The sound is like the world ending. Metal tearing, bolts shearing, water rushing into spaces that were never meant to flood. Interior compartments collapsing. The second-class library, where I sat reading just yesterday, crumpling as the deck above crashes down. The dining saloon where we shared meals, compressing as the ship folds in on itself. The stern section rises higher as the forward section's weight is released, then falls back with a crash that sends shockwaves through the water, that makes the entire remaining structure ring like a bell. People are thrown from the deck. Others cling on, screaming. The angle is insane now, maybe 60 degrees. I'm not standing on the deck anymore. I'm clinging to it while it tries to shake me off into the ocean. The forward section, freed from the weight of the stern, sinks quickly. I watch its silhouette disappear beneath the surface, taking hundreds of people with it. The suction is enormous. Anyone still on that section is pulled down into black water. The stern bobs for a moment, almost vertical now. The afterwell deck is a cliff face pointing at the stars. Somewhere in the darkness, the band has stopped playing. I look around desperately for something to hold, some path to safety that doesn't exist. People are jumping now, throwing themselves into the water rather than wait for the ship to take them. The water is maybe 15 feet below where I'm clinging. I can hear it churning, full of debris and bodies and ice. I think about staying with the ship, riding it down. Surely that's better than the water. But then the stern section tilts forward again, and I know I'm out of time. I let go. The water. The cold hits like a fist. Every muscle in my body seizes simultaneously. My lungs empty in a gasp I can't control. For several seconds I can't think, can't move, can't do anything except feel the impossible cold drilling through my clothes and skin and straight into my bones. The water is 28 degrees, 4 degrees below freezing, kept liquid only by its salt content. Human beings can survive in it for maybe 15 minutes before hypothermia stops their hearts. I surface gasping and immediately understand why people are screaming. The cold isn't just uncomfortable, it's painful, agonizing, like being stabbed by thousands of needles simultaneously. Every nerve is firing distress signals. My body is trying to shut down, conserve core temperature, retreat into itself, but I'm still alive, still conscious. Around me, hundreds of others are in the water. I can hear them more than see them, voices crying out in the darkness. Some are calling for help, others are simply screaming, incoherent with shock and pain. The Titanic's stern section is maybe 50 yards away, still vertical, still perpendicular to the ocean. As I watch, it begins to slip beneath the surface, slowly at first, then faster. The water accepts it greedily, pulling it down. I see one of the massive funnels break free and crash into the water, crushing anyone beneath it. Then the ship is gone, sliding into the depths, taking the last remnants of light and hope with it. The suction pulls at me, tries to drag me down with it. I kick weakly, trying to swim away, but my limbs barely respond. The cold has them already. When the ship is finally gone completely, the ocean settles, the churning stops. The only sounds are the voices of the people floating with me, and even those are starting to fade. Hypothermia works fast. I can feel it happening, a creeping numbness spreading from my extremities inward. My fingers are blocks of wood. My feet are gone, sensation-wise. My thinking is starting to slow, thoughts becoming sticky and hard to complete. I see a piece of debris nearby, a wooden panel maybe 4 feet square. I swim towards it with the last of my strength and drape my torso over it. It's not enough to keep me out of the water, but it's something to hold on to. Around me, the screaming is tapering off. One by one, voices are falling silent as hypothermia does its work. The cold is claiming us, pulling us down into sleep. I want to sleep. More than anything, I want to close my eyes and let go. The cold isn't even painful anymore. It's just nothing. Absence, the end of sensation. But some stubborn part of my brain knows that sleep means death. Stay awake, I tell myself. Stay awake just a little longer. Clean hin signs. 2:40. The screaming has stopped. I don't know when it happened exactly. Somewhere in the last 20 or 30 minutes, the last voices faded away, leaving only the sound of water lapping against debris. The ocean is quiet again, peaceful, like nothing happened. I'm still clinging to my wooden panel, though I can't feel my hands anymore. Can't feel much of anything, really. There's a detached quality to my thoughts, like I'm observing from a distance. I should be dead. 15 minutes in water this cold is supposed to be fatal, and I've been in for much longer. Maybe the life jacket is helping, keeping my core slightly warmer. Maybe I'm just stubborn. Maybe I'm already dead and don't know it yet. Stars fill the sky above me, more stars than should be possible. The Milky Way is a river of light stretching from horizon to horizon. It's beautiful in a way that seems cruel given the circumstances. I think about my parents, waiting for word of my arrival in New York. They'll get a telegram instead. Missing, presumed lost. They'll never know exactly what happened, how it felt, what I thought about in the end. I think about the accounting position I'll never fill, the apartment I'll never rent, the American life I'll never live. 4 days ago, my future seemed certain, laid out like a map. Now it's gone, erased by a chunk of ice. That probability said we should have missed. The ocean doesn't care about probability. Something bumps against me in the water. A body, face down, arms spread. One of hundreds floating in the darkness. I push it away gently, apologetically. I'm sorry, I think. I'm sorry for all of us. Time loses meaning. I might have been in the water for an hour or 3 hours. It all feels the same, just cold and darkness and the slow cessation of thought. Then in the distance, a light. I think I'm hallucinating at first, but no, there it is. A single light on the horizon, moving slowly. Then another light. Then several. Lifeboats. They're coming back. I try to shout, but my voice is a croak, barely audible even to me. I try to wave, but my arm lifts maybe 6 inches before falling back. I don't have the strength. The lights move closer. I can hear oars now, creaking in their locks. Voices calling out, searching for survivors. Over here, someone nearby manages to shout. Over here! A lifeboat materializes out of the darkness. Hands reach down, pulling people from the water. I see Benjamin Cross hauled aboard, barely conscious. Then several others I don't recognize. The boat comes closer to me. A man with a lantern leans over the side, peering into the darkness. Here, I whisper. I'm here. His eyes find me. For a moment, I think he's going to pass me by, that I'm too far gone to save. Then strong hands grip my jacket and pull. I don't remember the actual transfer. One moment I'm in the water. The next I'm lying in the bottom of a lifeboat, covered with someone's coat, shaking violently, My body tries to generate heat it doesn't have. "We've got you," a woman's voice says. "You're safe now." But I'm not safe. None of us are. We're floating in a lifeboat in the middle of the Atlantic, surrounded by bodies and debris, waiting for rescue that may never come. Still, it's better than the water. I close my eyes and let the shaking continue. The long dawn, 4:30. The sky begins to lighten in the east. Not sunrise yet, but the first suggestion that the sun still exists, that the night will eventually end. I'm still in the lifeboat, still alive, though I can't quite believe it. My clothes are frozen stiff. Ice has formed in my hair, but my heart is beating, my lungs are breathing. Somehow impossibly I survived. Around us, the ocean is carpeted with debris, deck chairs, luggage, life jackets with no one in them. Bodies, hundreds of bodies floating face down in their life jackets, frozen in place. The scale of it is incomprehensible. This was a ship. 2,000 people going about their lives, eating dinner and playing cards and making plans. Now most of them are gone, taken by water cold enough to stop time. The other survivors in the lifeboat are silent. Everyone is processing, trying to understand how they're alive when so many others aren't. There's no celebration, no relief, just exhausted, traumatized silence. As the light grows stronger, someone points at the horizon. A ship. We all turn to look. There, steaming toward us through the ice field, is a vessel. Not as large as Titanic, but solid and real, and coming our way, the Carpathia. We'll learn her name later. She received our distress signals and changed course immediately, racing through ice fields at dangerous speed to reach us. Her captain risked his own ship and crew to save strangers. She arrives just after 5:30, as the sun breaks over the horizon. One by one, the lifeboats are found and brought alongside. Survivors are hauled up rope ladders or lifted in slings. The Carpathia's crew wraps us in blankets, gives us hot coffee, leads us to warm spaces where we can finally stop shaking. I climb the ladder on my own, barely. My hands are so numb I can't feel the rungs. Have to visually verify I'm gripping them. At the top, a steward catches my arm and pulls me onto the deck. "Easy now," he says. "You're safe." I look back at the ocean, at the debris field spreading for miles, at the ice, chunks of it glowing pink in the dawn light, at the space where the Titanic should be and isn't. Somewhere down there, 1,500 people are settling onto the ocean floor. 1,500 souls who had futures and plans and people waiting for them. The ocean took them all and will keep them forever. The Carpathia begins moving, steaming away from the wreck site. We gather at the railings, watching the debris recede into the distance. No one speaks. What is there to say? I survived. I don't know why. Don't know what I did differently from the hundreds who didn't. Luck maybe. Chance. Being in the right place at the wrong time. The sun continues to rise, the ocean sparkles, beautiful and deadly. Somewhere far below, in cold darkness, the Titanic rests, waiting for the day when someone might find her and remember. But for now, on this morning of April 15th, 1912, she's gone. Vanished as completely as if she never existed. Except we know she did. We were there. We felt her deck beneath our feet, heard her engines, ate her food, believed her promises. She felt safe until the moment she wasn't. Unsinkable until the ocean proved otherwise. That's the truth they'll never put in the newspapers or the official reports. The Titanic didn't feel dangerous. She felt inevitable, certain, modern. She felt like the future, and then she was gone, taking that future with her into the deep. I wrap the blanket tighter around my shoulders and turn away from the railing. The Carpathia is warm. There's hot food. There are people who want to help, but part of me is still in the water, still floating in the darkness, still listening to the screaming fade into silence. That part will never leave the ocean. That part drowned on April 15th, along with 1,500 others. And in the years to come, whenever I close my eyes, I'll see it again. The stars, the ice, the black water waiting patiently for steel to fail. The ocean never warns you, it just waits. End.